Welcome back, chess friends. It's match number 2, game 1. And it's going to be interesting because towards the end of match 1, it seemed like McDonnell was picking up a bit of speed. He'd got all of his dodgy gambits and dodgy openings out of his system, and he was starting to stand toe-to-toe with Bourdonnais, I felt. So we'll see how he gets on in match 2. It's 9 games, not including draws, and McDonnell has the white pieces, and he starts with e4. e5 from Bourdonnais, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, and b4, the Evans Gambit. And Morphy says, the game before us is the first in which that most beautiful of openings, the Evans Gambit, occurs between these two distinguished players. McDonnell had for some time been familiar with the attack, having analysed the debut with its originator, Captain Evans. Bourdonnais, on the other hand, was comparatively unacquainted with this new style of play. Okay, so at first glance, it looks like McDonnell is trying another gambit, which hasn't. These gambits don't seem to work out too well for him, but Morphy is cautiously optimistic this time. So let's see how it goes on. Bourdonnais accepts the gambit, and the bishop captures the pawn. Now c3, chasing away the bishop back to a5. And Morphy comments again. He says, our readers are all aware that there has long existed a difference of opinion among good players as to the relative advantages of bishop to a5 and bishop to c5. The latter move, in our opinion, affords a more satisfactory defence than any at the second player's choice. Okay, so he didn't play bishop c5, he played bishop to a5, and now McDonnell just castles. And Morphy says, this was considered White's best play until after the death of both these illustrious chess athletes. Later analysis has proved d4, followed by castling, etc., to be the strongest line of attack at this juncture. Okay, so McDonnell castled first, and then Bourdonnais played d6, but Morphy says, knight f6 is the correct move. If in reply White advanced d4, Black replies with castles, and will preserve a safe and well-developed game. Okay, so that didn't happen. Again, it was d6, and now McDonnell played d4, and Bourdonnais retreated his bishop to b6. And again, Morphy is very chatty today. He says, Black should have captured pawn with pawn before retreating the bishop to b6. Okay, Morphy, let's just carry on with the game. D captures e5, bishop to g4, pinning the knight, but McDonnell says, I don't mind, I can pin just as well as you can, and indeed pins the black knight. Bourdonnais captures, the queen captures back, and Bourdonnais captures e5. Now, McDonnell spots that this pawn is undefended, so he moves his queen across to attack it, but Bourdonnais just defends simply with his queen, and immediately gets attacked by a bishop, so he moves back to e6. Now, McDonnell moves knight a3, and you can see now that he is fully developed, so well done, McDonnell, for your rapid development. You can see that Bourdonnais still hasn't castled, and he still needs to get this knight out. So he brings his knight out immediately, but he doesn't have time to castle, because McDonnell immediately captures the knight, and Bourdonnais captures back with the pawn. Now here, Morphy says, to have retaken with queen would have been better play. So, like this. Suppose queen captures f6, then knight to c4, castles, bishop captures the knight, queen captures the bishop, knight captures e5, and queen to e6, which Morphy says is the best. He also says, the game is quite even. Had Black, in this variation, captured the pawn with the queen on his last move, like so, he must have lost the exchange as White would have moved knight to d7. So here you can see he's attacking the bishop, and he needs to be careful because he can also fork the king and queen here because the pawn can't capture back due to the queen pinning it. So yep, nice variation, but that didn't happen. Bourdonnais instead captured the bishop with the pawn, and the game continues. Rook on a to d1, and now a good move here would be king to e7, letting the rooks see each other, but Bourdonnais didn't play that. He played bishop to c5 and attacked the knight. And we continue with queen to g7. And here Bourdonnais plays king to e7. And Morphy says, this is a mistake which cost the exchange. He should have moved the attacked rook to f8. Okay, Morphy, that's not what happened. He moved king to e7. And we continue with bishop to c4 attacking the black queen, and now rook on a to g8 attacking the white queen. So now we have a series of exchanges. The queen captures the rook captures the queen, the bishop captures the black queen, and the pawn captures the bishop. And after the dust is settled, you can indeed see that McDonnell is up the exchange. He's got a rook to a rook and a bishop. So good job, McDonnell, you're doing great. But it must be pointed out that Bourdonnais does have an extra pawn still because of the gambit. He's got doubled pawns here, so maybe that's a disadvantage. We'll see how it turns out. We have now knight to c2, rook to g4, and rook on f to e1, defending this pawn, which is being attacked by the black rook now. And Bourdonnais just pushes his f pawn, and we have captures and then captures. So Bourdonnais has successfully undoubled his pawns. Maybe this will work out well for him. We'll see what happens. We have knight to e3 attacking the rook. So Bourdonnais just captures it with the bishop, and the rook captures back. Now Bourdonnais pushes his king to add another defender to these central pawns. Rook across to h3, attacking the undefended pawn here, so Bourdonnais retreats the rook to defend it, and McDonnell here just delivers a check on h6, which causes the king to retreat. And now we have McDonnell playing rook to b1, attacking this other undefended pawn, and you'll see that this pawn can't be pushed to defend itself because the knight will be lost. So instead, he plays the knight back to d8, which also defends this pawn, f3, and now Bourdonnais can play b6 without losing the knight because the knight's out of the way on the back rank. McDonnell plays rook to d1, and the knight goes to f7 and attacks the other rook. But McDonnell doesn't mind because it allows rook to c6, threatening this pawn. Now, if you look here, the king can't come across to help defend it because the other rook is blocking its path, and the king itself is blocking the path of the rook to defend the pawn as well. So it seems that this pawn is just lost. How does Bourdonnais react? Well, he plays rook to g8, which does nothing. He's lost the pawn. And that comes with check. So the king moves, and then the a pawn is lost as well. So all of a sudden, as well as being an exchange down, Bourdonnais is a pawn down. So awesome job, McDonnell. We have rook to c8 now, and then rook on d to d7, and at this point Bourdonnais resigned the game. So great job, McDonnell, I love it. Excellent stuff. Why did he resign? Well, these two white rooks are very strong. They're threatening to pick up this knight, so he doesn't have time to pick up this pawn here. And these two pawns are looking very strong, bearing down on this singular black pawn. They're going to be pushed up the board and cause lots of trouble, along with the power of these double rooks. Bourdonnais was quite correct in resigning here because there's nothing that he can do. It's just an inevitable loss for him. So excellent job, McDonnell. I love it. I love that he's a whole game up in the second match already. We'll see how he gets on in the next game, but in the meantime, we'll just enjoy the fact for a couple of days of McDonnell being in the lead. I'll see you next time.